Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? NFL rosters have to cut from 90 to 85 today, Tuesday. But the Saints, the Saints got busy early and made about a dozen roster moves on Monday. I'll run through them very quickly. They signed linebacker John Bostic, defensive end Nico Lalos, defensive tackle Jaleel Johnson, who they let go a week ago after missing several days of practice to make room before the Texans game. Now brought him back. They waived Jordan Brown with injury designation. They waived Isaiah Pryor with an injury designation. Defensive lineman TJ Carter was waived, as was safety Jack Corner. Scott Patchin, the defensive end, was also waived. Kicker John Parker Romo, an undrafted rookie out of Virginia Tech, he was waived. The two biggest surprises were wide receiver Aesop Winston and offensive lineman Ethan Greenidge, who was designated to IR, and then defensive back Bryce Thompson released with an injury settlement. So a couple of things that I'd like to roll through here with the ones that actually stand out. Linebacker John Bostic is interesting to me because we have focused so much here when we've talked about the Saints so far in this camp about two positions primarily. It's running back and linebacker, right? I mean, largely I think we know who the offensive linemen are going to be, who's making the team on the defensive line, who's making the team in the secondary, who's making the team at wide receiver. It's really running back, linebacker. That's kind of it. So when the Saints sign John Bostic, it's going to catch my attention because Bostic's a guy that's played a ton. He brings a really veteran presence into this room that has, right now, a lot of inexperienced guys. Guys that we might... Chase Hansen played really well against Houston. Andrew Dowell has played, is practiced well and shown well. But with Bostic, you're talking about a guy who's a former second-round pick of the Bears back in 2013. He has started 82 games in his career. He's played 107 games. He was in the playoffs back in 2020. He's played for 5 different teams, so he's been a bit of a journeyman since he's been in the league over 8 years, but he has played a ton of regular season NFL football, and you don't hang around NFL rosters for nearly a decade if you can't suit it up and run, and John Bostic has done that. So, look, I mean, the Saints, they brought in a veteran in Kiko Alonso who retired after one practice. It's very clear they know what they have in DeMario Davis, who's one of the best linebackers in football. They're very high on Pete Werner, the second-round pick, who they're bringing along slowly to get him healthy to be ready to go for the opener. After that, it's a giant question. Like, is Zach Bond even going to make the team this year? But what they're trying to do very clearly is bring in some veteran presence at linebacker. It's why they brought Kiko Alonso back, and it's why they've now added John Bostic. So I'm not ready to make any bold prediction because I haven't seen John Bostic yet play with this team. But that's an interesting one, because you can look at the pattern that's mapping, that they keep trying to add a veteran into this linebacker group, as they did with Kiko Alonso and now John Bostic. So keep an eye on John Bostic. He'll be a very interesting one. I mentioned Jaleel Johnson as well. The Saints' defensive line, they're certainly looking for depth, and Johnson has been here, and he might be ultimately a guy who makes this team or be part of a rotation, but David Onyemata, we know, is a lock to make the team and might be the only one. But when you see guys like Malcolm Roach and Shai Tuttle, and we kind of know some of the guys who are the usual suspects there, unless if the Saints go make a trade to bring in a more veteran player or sign a free agent. The name that I'll continue to throw out, who remains unsigned, is Ndamukong Suh. And it's probably a situation where Ndamukong Suh is sitting there going, 36 years old, played forever, don't really need to go through training camp, look for a needy team and maybe a great situation where you can be a starter and go to a winning team and have an opportunity to jump right in. Like, that would make a lot of sense for Ndamukong Suh at 35 years old, who, again, has never missed a game in his career due to injury. So we'll keep an eye on that as it transpires. But on the defensive line, that's the guy I'm still keeping an eye on. The other two roster moves that the Saints made outside of Bostic that was interesting to me, mentioned Aesop Winston. Winston's a little bit of a surprise cut because he's played so well. He's 25 years old. He has basically spent his career on the practice squad. And it's not just because he's been a good receiving option, but because he has been a special teams ace. He's a guy that's been able to return punts and kicks and cover punts and kicks, similar in the mold that Courtney Roby filled for the Saints years ago. That's what Aesop Winston's done. But the problem is the Saints rarely, if ever, keep 6 receivers. And unless if it's a special teams ace. But you already have Deontay Hardy, who's going to be your return specialist. He's been an all-pro return specialist. So Aesop Winston's not taking Deontay Hardy's job as a return specialist. So there's probably not a role for him on this team, and you already know who your receivers are going to be. It's going to be Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave. Those are your first 3. And then the next 2 are very likely Marquez Callaway and Deontay Hardy. That's your 5. So Tre'Quan Smith's going to get cut, and it's hard to see a spot for Aesop Winston considering you've got a return specialist in Deontay Hardy, and maybe a defensive back like Justin Evans becomes a special teams ace who makes the team along with JT Gray. So what the Saints probably are doing here is taking a guy and saying, hey, look, before rosters go fill up, we're going to let you go have an opportunity to catch on somewhere else where you can make a team. Because they know he's not going to make this roster. And he's a good player who can play in the NFL. And the other one that was interesting was offensive lineman Ethan Greenidge. Again, running through the roster moves that the Saints made. Ethan Greenidge went to IR. So, again, injury has cost him his season now for the 2nd consecutive year. And this is a disappointing one because he's been one of those guys that they like a lot. They signed him as an undrafted free agent in 2019, kept him on the practice squad. In 2020, he was promoted to the active roster. He played in 15 games in 2020, including the playoffs. So they like the player a lot. And then he was set to make the team again last year. And when you think about all the injuries that happened a year ago, he would have been right in the mix. But again, injury cost him the entire season in 2021. And really, that opened the door for Calvin Throckmorton. Throckmorton was the one on the interior that made the most of that, and James Hurst at left tackle as well. But Throckmorton was the one that really stepped up as that rotational guy on the interior as a backup guy who ended up playing. And Throckmorton ended up playing in 17 games with 14 starts a year ago. Had Greenidge not gotten hurt, that could have been Ethan Greenidge. But it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate circumstance where he got injured. Someone else took the opportunity to make the most of it. You better believe Calvin Throckmorton's going to make this team. And now you just look at what's going to happen with Greenidge. So Greenidge right now is 24 years old. It's probably the end of his time in New Orleans because you look at, as I mentioned, Throckmorton, who's going to be on the team, and then you got guys like Forrest Lamp who are battling for a job. It opens the door for Landon Young, who's a draft pick a year ago, to maybe make the team and take some of those reps. So for Ethan Greenidge, he's on IR, he's done for the year, but this might be the end of his time in New Orleans as other guys are going to have that opportunity. And we've seen guys make the most of those opportunities in New Orleans as sort of the swing lineman. Senio Kelmete did it and got a nice contract in Houston. We saw Will Clapp do it for years, on and off the practice squad, was sort of that tackle eligible. He played center when they needed him. Got a nice contract with the Chargers this year. Throckmorton's the guy who's probably next in line for that. Greenidge could have been, but unfortunately injury looks like it's going to cost him his opportunity in New Orleans. So those are the first cut downs for the Saints. Again, they had to go from 90 to 85, but they made a dozen roster moves on Monday. Next week, they'll have to go from 85 to 80, and then they'll get to the final cut down where they get down to the 53-man roster. So we will keep watching, and we'll have another big wave next week after the Saints play Green Bay this coming weekend, week 2 of the preseason. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.